It's time to wake up, shake up, and thrive, because people over 50 are washed up, past it, and done. Now, you should also pay attention, because what's happening is going to happen to you, given that the alternative to getting older is a bit more dramatic. Let's find out what Ellen Kocher and Dominique Dahaou have to say about WUSUT. Hello and welcome to the Practical Leadership Podcast, where I interview great leaders and try to extract their wisdom and experience for you to learn from and hopefully avoid making their mistakes. Check out practical-leadership.academy because you want to help your new managers succeed with hybrid or remote working. Ellen Kocher, Dominique Dahaou. Hello. How did I do? Lovely to see you. Thank you so much for joining me.
So happy to be here.
I've been looking forward to this. I have so been looking forward to this conversation. When we had our brief chats, the run up to this, and feeling slightly on the edge of decrepitude, you inspired me so much. You really made me think differently. And as you were just describing when we were talking before, WUSUT, my goodness, the 5-generational workforce, people with experience. I aim this podcast at folk who are a wee bit younger, because you're going to get old too. Dominique, Ellen, would you be so kind as to introduce yourselves a little bit?
Sure. So I'm Swiss, 100%. Been 30 years in corporate human resource function across the world. I've lived and worked in the US and Eastern Europe, in Africa. Created my first business when I was 25 in Mauritius, and went on and assumed big roles. My last corporate roles was the global head of HR for a 95,000 employees company. So 95,000 good reasons to wake up in the morning and be full of energy and to be tired at the end of the day. And a few years ago, I thought that life could offer me something more. And that's how I jumped out of the corporate world without having anything and created a few months later the current company where I work, which I founded, which is called Point North International. What we do is we guide and support executives and companies to change their perspective when they're lost, hence Point North, and give them a better reason to restart a professional life that makes sense for individuals and for companies to shift the way they manage their most important assets, which is the beauty, the motivation, the personalities, the skills, the experience, the craft of their people. So I'm helping them finding their new north, which is today a must-have. Otherwise, they won't survive. And I'm passionate about helping people find out about their true potential and not give up, whatever age, whatever situation, and companies to see the light after so many decades of doing the wrong things. And I love that. And a few years ago, I met with the lady in my site, and we thought that it could be even more fun doing something together. And that's how we created the company that we have together. So each of us have her own company, and we do have a third one together. And we're having a lot of fun.
Certainly are. We certainly are. And I am also Swiss, actually. Yeah, so I'm Ellen. That was Dominique speaking. I am Ellen, and I'm also Swiss, but I'm Swiss by marriage. I've been in Switzerland nearly 40 years. I came post-grad after having fallen in love with Rome and Italy and Mediterranean food and languages. And my background was in finance. I worked for 10 years in management consulting. And before becoming partner, and at the time, which you remember, Paul, the big 8 firms, and one of the big 8 firms, I was pregnant, had my babies, and I chose to take care of the kids rather than go on and become a partner. And after 3 children in the new home, young life, maybe 4 years, I decided to change my own personal lifestyle. And that began the second part of my career and my journey as a health and wellness coach. So I pursued my training as a health and wellness coach and an expert in workplace well-being. So I did that for an outside company for 10 years. And when I was 51, created my own company. And about 5 years into that company, which is called Wellness, Wealth Plus Health, about 5 years into that company, I met Dominique. And together we were both starting to focus our work on the older generation, the 50 plus. I think older today is going to be more like 80 plus. But anyway, the older generation, the sort of 50 plus generations. And we created together WUSUT, which you just learned, Paul. Can we test you? What does WUSUT mean? What does WUSUT mean, Paul?
It means to wake up, to shake up, and to thrive.
Yes, that's it. That's
Wake
it.
up, thrive. I absolutely love that. I love it. And I want you to take me through it, but we'll get there. We'll get there. Thank you, Ellen. Thank you, Dominique. Thank you for sharing. So your background's fairly comprehensive, traditional-ish, but not, right up to the point where you decided to do something different, you know. And I think, Ellen, when you said it there, you decided that you wanted to step into, not away from, because my wife did something very similar. We decided that she wanted to step into the role of, she considers the best thing she's done, which is raise our children. She's done admirably so far, even though they can be rat bags sometimes. It's not her fault, it's my fault. The rat bagginess is mine, you know, all the joy and the glory is hers. And I think, well, I don't want to preempt anything, but I think this is going to be a very special conversation for the people listening here, in that nobody talks about old, and we're not even that old, frankly, when you said you did this when you were 51, and you just announced you'd had a birthday there. I'm not going to ask you because that's rude. Nobody ever does that. But my goodness, if you are joining us on YouTube, you know exactly what I'm talking about, Ellen, right?
I just turned 61, by the way. I just
You were supposed to share that. My goodness.
Very proud to share that with no problem whatsoever. And I'm being mentored currently. It's one of our feature mums next month. My mentor coach is 79 years old, and she has said to us, you will hear it on her interview, I will never retire. She has never made more money, impacted more people than at age 79. And I agree with you. And I want to just touch on something you said earlier, Paul, when you were addressing your listeners and you said, you know, we don't usually address this older audience. You said to them, but you're all going to get old. And I think that's really, I just want to tap into that, because every single human being will grow old. Every single human being.
No choice.
We have a pretext where we say, we don't want them to get old. So getting old is grumpy and fuddy-duddy and unhappy, not thriving. We're growing old, stepping into the role, isn't it, Paul? It's just what you said. It's going into something positive. When we see retirees, rather than getting that freedom from work, they have the freedom to work and do what they want and explore and advance. So that mindset, when you said that to people, I think it's a conversation. This is the wake up. This is the wake up.
And it's really why people don't talk about it, because there's a lot of preconceived ideas about being old or getting old, and nobody wants that. However, the notion of reaching that point where you're considered old or you consider yourself old, that is totally different meaning and totally different perspective. And this morning I was coaching a client who's looking for a new career, and he's 61 and he's looking for a new job at 61-year-old, and he's expecting him to grow in his career for at least until he's 80, at least.
Wow.
even further. So it's more like starting a new phase of life than reaching an end of something. So it's more starting into rather than ending something. People don't like ending. They like starting.
Recently, I read something. I don't remember if it was McKinsey or who wrote, but it's, if we consider the post-retirement phase a career phase, we think of it differently. You think of it as a career phase. You've got the beginning of your career, the middle of your career, the end of a certain job, but then the beginning of a next career. If you think of it as a career phase, we just might conceptually do something different with it.
Career phase rather than a life phase, because retirement is, well, it's all over. All the important stuff is done.
Yeah.
Because I think we do tend to conceptualize that work is the only important thing you've got.
Right.
And not getting old, aging, but not getting old. Well, actually, what's the alternative? You know, happy birthday. Well, what's the alternative?
Yeah.
All right. WUSUT. Wrap in WUSUT here. How are you helping people who are finding themselves in organizations where people are jumping about 18 months at a time, 18-month roles. In their 20s and 30s, they're the people who are prized, but they're frankly useless. No, that's cruel. It's not correct. The people who are younger take longer, I think, to get to grips with things because of the lack of experience, both in the subject matter and in the people around them. Specific skills, I think, are inherently more transferable. I think it's the people skills, the emotional skills, those things that we accumulate as we age. And finally, I've never felt more intellectually capable. I've never felt smarter. I have a lot of intellectual energy. Physical energy, I go to the gym and try that, but intellectual energy is a different thing. How do you, for these people who are happy aging but not wanting to be old, help them to wake up, to shake up, to thrive in a workplace where there are so many different generations?
Yeah.
Why don't I start and you can pick up?
Yes.
I think it would be interesting to frame it. We have sort of three scenarios in the workplace. Let's talk about the workplace because the workplace covers groups and individuals. It covers the approach of the employer and the employee. So let's talk about that. And that's what we do most, honestly. There are three scenarios. One scenario is the sort of 50 plus generation within the workplace that have the itch, Paul. They want to do something different. They're not quite sure what. They might be asking themselves questions about, is this job aligned with what I want to do and be, et cetera, et cetera? Do I even have time? I might be a sandwich generation and I want to work part-time. So something's a bit off and we need to rekindle something going on in their job, but they're going to stay where they're at. The second scenario, and then I'll let you pick up after I've given the three scenarios. I think that'll be a good way to compile it. The second scenario that we manage, and Dominique will tell you how we manage it, is those 50 plus employees that unfortunately the employer needs to get rid of for whatever reason. And there are certainly good reasons. Now, I would put a little parentheses around that. Sometimes maybe they're not well thought out. We will agree with you on the emotional, intellectual capacity of the older generation. But it can also happen that we need to clean house a bit and get rid of some people. That is a generation. We do a lot of outplacement work. We help those people in the next step of their life outside of their current job. And the third scenario, and we're about one third in terms of the work we do in the workplace. The third scenario is preparing employees for retirement. And that tends to be more the 60, 65-year-olds, 67-year-olds. They're going to be leaving perhaps a corporate life of 35, 45 years, and now they need to reinvent something. And those are the three scenarios that we really work mostly around. Would you like to explain how we do it?
Yeah. So if we take the first category of people, those who they're not unhappy, they're not bad enough, or it just doesn't work the way it used to. But they don't know where to start. They don't know whether it's just them or somebody else. So it's a lot about putting them together with similar people in the same organization, but potentially, or across organizations, but helping them clarifying what their true brand at work is and getting the nuggets of everything that they find normal because it's been part of their life. So it's the skills, the talents, the strengths that they have for them doesn't look any different from other. So it's to raise that awareness and to help them talk about it, branding into something that makes sense for the organization, and also learn how to network within the organization and do that in an authentic way so that they can really associate their background, their skills, their talents, their strengths with adding value to the organization. It's also to raise their curiosity of what's going on in the organization, because very often they've been siloed in a department.
And what we've also noticed, we've got quite a few situations where we've learned in the company, as of 50, we don't train anybody anymore. There's kind of like already on the way out. They don't reskill them as of 50. And we're so surprised to hear that. So we kind of nudge the employers to reskill them. They've got another 15 to 20 years of valid, available, motivated, as you said, emotionally stable years to be productive. And we've noticed, so that's one of the things that we nudge on the employer side in that situation of the
adding value, adding value to the
Yeah.
organization and valuing themselves too. Because there's no way an organization will recognize the value if you don't think yourself that you can bring value.
I think you've touched on two and a half aspects of this. One It's what the employer, the individual themselves can do, which you could call personal branding. I'm not a fan of the term, but it's the concept of personal branding. And then I think importantly, vitally, it's from the employer's point of view.
Exactly.
Totally.
Because it doesn't matter if you're sowing your most fertile seeds on the ground, if the ground itself is sterile and barren, it will not grow. Or it will grow with the shoots will be pulled out in your hand and the soul, I'm trying to paraphrase Matthew, I think, something like that. Anyway,
good job.
Really badly. Sorry. But you mentioned something there, Dominique, when you said that the personal branding is not just to make yourself more known, but to make yourself, to motivate yourself as an individual and make yourself aware of the possibility.
Yeah.
So it's not just, look at me, here I am. There's an aspect of what is out there for me to do.
Yes, and pragmatically, this is, do you want to explain, like understanding our strengths? To get really pragmatic, we look at what are their values? What are their strengths? What are their competencies? When's the last time you did a personal strengths assessment? I'm just asking you, Paul, who had just had a birthday.
Me, about 8 months ago.
About 8 months ago, so it was pretty recent.
Yeah, I do that sort of stuff a lot.
But that's great. Most people don't. Most people do it a lot
though.
at the beginning of their careers, but then they just kind of let it go. But our strengths change throughout a lifetime.
I agree with you. The word branding or marketing is very often not well used or badly understood. But when you think about value and impact, which as we grow older, we see people that are more and more motivated and enthusiastic about making an impact. So when you do the translation between this is where I'm strong at, this is what motivates me, this is my background, this is my experience, how can that help my department, my organization, my clients? Sometimes a lot of people say, well, this is where I'm good at. And I ask them, so what? How do you transfer what you know, what you're good at into value? How is that going to help the organization, the department, the clients? I'm good at so that you get this. The so that is very often missing. They say, I'm good at that, and help yourself. Find out by yourself how it can help you. And this is what I call branding and marketing, is explaining your audience, the person you're talking to or the people you're talking to. This is what I'm good at, and this is how it's going to be helpful to you. Makes a huge difference. And people, internal saboteurs, think, well, I'm going to be arrogant or whatever. And I don't want to be branding myself. I'm not good at selling myself. We're not here into selling. We're here into value, adding value for a purpose. And that's totally different.
There is, I think, the whole idea of branding, marketing, selling, and people not liking these ideas is simply because they don't understand them or they've been exposed to them poorly. Because for me, with a strong commercial background, marketing sucks unless it gives me something I can make money out of. Marketing for, look, a branded pen. There is value in that, but you've got to quantify it and it's got to be an outcome. What's the impact of the aforementioned branded pen? Oh, I don't like networking. Well, fair enough if you don't like networking, but why are you doing it? What are you hoping to get out of it? You're hoping to give network. You share, and in return, the universe is beneficent and it will give you something in return in full course of whatever. When you're selling something, you're not saying, you don't need it, but I'm going to make you buy it anyway. Well, no, I'm going to create impact in your life, and that's going to make you want what I've got more. You'll come back. If I can demonstrate recurring impact, you're going to give me recurring usage, revenue, whatever. So this concept of rebranding.
Yes.
That's quite powerful. Talking about it from the concept of value and impact, I think, makes it much more tangible to people.
And that's much more positive as well. We're not talking about one taking from somebody else. We're one giving and sharing and building together. And that's totally different.
Create the pie, make the pie bigger.
And actually, as I think of it, Dominique, the way you've put it, this rebranding, now that we've called it that, this rebranding, it's the same in those three scenarios we've laid out. Whether it's the scenario of someone rebranding within the company, rebranding outside because they're going to a new employer, or rebranding a retired me, right? because how many people, I have a neighbor that just retired and he's gone to become an oenologist, a wine specialist at age 65. And he's going to spend 5 years studying oenology. He's not planning to work in a restaurant. He's passionate about it. He loves what he's doing. That's his new branding.
I love that.
The difference between the three groups of people that we mentioned before, when you're laid off. Sorry, my English is getting bloop. And you're losing your job at a certain age, which is over 50 or close to. The perception that when comes an age, you're done, and there's no way. It's impossible that you're going to find a new job, and nobody will want you ever. So the work that we do here is much more on the emotional dimension, and so that we can bring people back up to have self-esteem, but also to get away from the anger, frustration, fear, doubts, emotions, that you don't belong to anything because you've lost your job. If you worked for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 25 years somewhere, and all of a sudden you don't have a job, for a lot of people, it means you have no identity any longer. And that's
huge.
Very, very important.
Destabilizing.
It's devastating for some people because they don't have a label. And when people say, oh, so who are you? They said, well, I'm nobody because I can't say I'm VP, I'm accountant, I'm whatever. They don't have a label any longer. So we work a lot on self-consciousness, on emotions, so that they can restart from a base of, it's not because I've lost my job, which is a temporary phase in my life, that I cannot start a new phase, but remain the same human being, but with a different work. That's not the end of the world, but it's a lot of perception. And society there is very cruel because, 50 is even not the question any longer. It's when you're 40, 45, you're done. Come on, you've got 60 years to go, 50 years to go, and you're done. It can't be done. But there's a lot of bias in society that doesn't help people to understand that it's not because you've reached a certain age that you're done, and that life doesn't define itself only by the job and the title.
Do you know, I think, like many things in life, what we're talking about here is not necessarily only applicable to the over 50.
No.
Like, you go to a hotel and you find they have these wonderful handles helping you in and out of the shower. It's not designed for me. It's designed for somebody who has mobility issues. But I tell you this much, I use them.
We use them, right? That's really well put. Yeah.
You've got the ramp going around the side that's there for wheelchairs. I use it sometimes because I'm pulling or carrying kids or whatever it is. It's there. You use the things that make the most sense. And the idea is here that we're talking about this. You've got an itch for something new. If you're 50 plus, you should talk to Ellen and Dominique. If you're not, you should be paying attention to what else is going on in your organization. Your brand
I think that's
networking. If you are afraid that you're going to lose your job, or you even if you're not, you need to make sure that you've got a life.
Yeah,
you know that
who are you? I'm a dad. I'm a car lover. I like this. I do a jobby thing that gets me money and I pay the house.
This is one of the reasons that our approach is holistic. We look at 5 dimensions of well-being: physical, emotional, spiritual, financial, and intellectual, which is basically brain health. How do we keep our brain alive? And we recently did a session on positive aging with a doctor of positive aging, actually. And it was for every age. And when we do awareness sessions in the workplace, we invite every age, the awareness session, because all of these considerations, physical, emotional, spiritual, which is our personal alignment, financial, you cannot plan too early, any of these. And all of them start very early. One of the biggest messages that we give in the financial dimension, I'll share a tip here, is to speak about money. If we can start speaking out loud about money at 25 and 30, and not hiding from kids, parents, spouses, friends, not sharing this communication, boy, is it easier when we get older. it's much easier. So all of our dimensions of well-being are relevant for every age, definitely.
There's something, though, different, because here we've been talking about the impact it has on individuals, but a lot of work that we do with companies is to have them realize that they can't afford to fire the people who have the experience at whatever age. But even if we look at demographics, the truth is, the fact is, the data is that the people at least in the Northern Hemisphere, is getting older. So if we keep letting go people who have the experience, the background, the maturity, the network, who have contact with clients, if we say goodbye because you're too old, you're too or not enough or whatever, we're going to lack resources to actually do the work of a company. And we start seeing now something that we haven't seen before, is that companies are closing doors, not because they lack clients, not because they lack finances, but because they lack competent people, which they can't find any longer because they haven't switched into, we may need to call back people who have the experience, are hardworking, are loyal, they're mature, they know how to do stuff. And it's not because they're 55,
and they're
60,
willing, and they may even
70,
need to work,
or need to work. And companies will not have the luxury to do without them. So they better know how to manage that older generation, because they will become more and more the employees or the consultants or the people who will do the work so that the company can survive. And that's a truth. It's a fact. It's not being nice with people, is to be intelligent in terms of business savviness and strategically think about how are we going to serve our clients if we don't have internally the skills, the competence, the experience, the maturity, the backgrounds of all generations, and predominantly from the older generations. And a lot of companies have not yet
woken up
to the reality that whether we like it or not, unless we start making a lot of babies everywhere, which is not the trend that we see worldwide, there are chances that we're not going to have enough people to deliver the job in the workplace.
There's a very clear statistic from Deloitte, and this statistic is a Swiss statistic, so it's based on a population of nearly 9 million. And the statistics came out last year. If all retirees retire as expected at 65, by 2030, we will need to import 300,000 workers out of 9 million. So import it extra to make up for the younger generation that is not as large as the older skilled generation. We will not have the people we need, even though we have an incredible amount of immigration. That statistic came out last year, and that statistic can be copy pasted with that ratio in all of the UK, in all of Europe, and in the United States, and most of Asia, actually.
And Brazil.
The same trend.
Yeah.
Same trend. South America,
Brazil,
same thing.
Same for large countries like Germany, like the US, even China, Japan as well. So it becomes not only a social realization or
it's an enlightened self-interest. Yeah.
It's an economical reality.
I think there is a globally underestimated demographic disaster happening all around us. There are very few countries that are growing outside of Africa and certain parts of Southeast Asia. Very few.
And that's the trend.
And the whole idea, this Malthusian nonsense that we got caught up in over decades, I think is just gibberish, frankly. It's statistically illiterate gibberish. And the fact that we're not making best use of the resources we have available, the resources that are human, that are available to us, is criminal. So it's delightful that you've got some scenarios, right? We did the first two. People who've got an itch to scratch should go out, find out what's there, and show what they've got. People who are on the verge of being gotten rid of or being placed out, need to make sure that they've got a life outside of work, so they can identify themselves as something other than the linesman of the day, the VP of whatever it is. And it's a good point, actually, that not everybody is an office worker. The skills that are declining dramatically are some of the things that are hard to do.
Yeah.
hard.
And
Nobody
in
wants to
fact,
do
that's one of the reasons that some people over 50 want to shift in their job because they physically can't do it anymore, like in a hospital or something, but they could do a million other jobs in that hospital. They maybe can't carry the stretchers anymore, but they would love to stay and do a million other things. So we need to think about that.
Out of the box, as we say.
Out of the box.
Out
Exactly.
of the box. Out of the box.
Exactly.
What's the last one? The last of the three scenarios, preparing people for retirement then. How do you help with that mindset? That
It is, as you said, it's a shift of mindset because for many people, when they retire, it's about hobbies, gardening, cooking, watching TV, traveling, and so on. But there's so much more today. And the notion of retirement, the definition has totally changed. So what we see in many countries, in Europe at least, is that retirement is like the graal to reach when you've worked hard for 30 years, 40 years, and so on. But today, the definition of retirement is totally different. So we help people manage that balance or identify how much they want to spend on leisure, on visiting, on traveling, on whatever makes them happy, but also something that prepare or gives them the focus on what is the legacy that they want to leave behind. In terms of impact, in terms of making a difference. And sometimes it turns into, I don't know, running an association or transferring their experience to other people, teaching or doing something that they've ever wanted but never had the time, like writing a book on their experience. So there's a lot of things that they can do beyond the normal hobbies and to transform their last phase or the next phase of their life into something that is more holistic, is modern, and speaks to the world of today and not only to what retirement used to be when their parents retired.
One of the things that we often comes up and that we coach around a lot is entrepreneurship, because we are both entrepreneurs that created our business beyond 50. We recently published an article we can give you the link to. Entrepreneurs and startups over 50 are 3 times more successful. 3 times or 5 times?
5 times.
5 times more successful than the 20-something entrepreneurs. And it comes from everything you've brought up too, Paul. They usually have a little bit of money. They have a huge network, an enormous amount of experience. At 50, they can choose what they do well and they can apply it. And these are all the things, and they tend to be willing to take more risks as well.
Yeah.
Been there, done that. So that makes for the perfect entrepreneur.
And they've got one more thing, which is they have much more resilience because they've been through tough times.
Ups and downs.
And when you're an entrepreneur, it's not a gentle cruise. It's an up and down roller coaster all the time. And we're much more trained on that.
I like that. I will absolutely get that link from you and share it in the description of the session.
With pleasure. Yeah.
Wonderful.
With pleasure.
We've been all over the place, but I think we've been fairly focused on the goodness, apart from the last piece, which is the entrepreneurialism. And even that, frankly, people who are not quite over 50 are allowed to be entrepreneurs these days, even though they might not be as successful as the rest of us.
You know, sometimes what happens when we share that statistic is the 40-somethings go, I can still do it. And then they jump into it at 48, 49, 50, because they're already thinking, I'm already whatever I am doing.
It's because they're all 20.
I'm like too old, right? And it's like, no, you're really not. Again,
and the VCs love it. The VCs absolutely. I mean, I've done some work with venture capitalists and private equity. They
absolutely.
This it's like, you used to be
do it,
15 times before. Yeah, you know how to read a P&L. Oh, like, what?
Exactly.
Of course.
Yeah. Nothing to teach me.
As we have to wrap up, we have to bring this is one of the worst things about podcasting is stopping.
Right.
We have to wrap up. What are you working on? How do you help people? Let's be really concrete here. How can people find you? What is it you're doing?
I'll go there. Okay. We have number one, we have a book that we've written in both English and French. It was written in English and then we had it translated into French. Wake Up, Shake Up, Thrive, How to Lift Up Your Life in Your 50s and Beyond. And we delve into Swiss secrets for not getting old. We're all going to grow old, aren't we?
Love it.
So there's our book. You can download the 2 chapters of our book from our website, wakeupshakeupthrive.com.
And if I may just add, at the end of the book, there is a Thrive guide. So people can start working on their own on how to thrive after the age of 50, at least to get started.
Yes, because we don't like to work like helicopters where we come in and we make a big mess and we fly away. We actually want to leave people with practical tips to move on with and to get forward with. The book focuses on the 5 dimensions of well-being. On our website, there is also a resource hub where people will find some fun little checklists and little tests they can do, whether they are an employer that wants to check in with where they're at with their aging demographic and might be interested in doing an assessment with us to see where they're at. They can do a pre-assessment on our website, or an individual can do a pre-assessment in their 5 dimensions of well-being to kind of get a flavor for where they might be at. And all that is absolutely available on our website.
Mm-hmm. There's tons of resources on the website.
And
Lots of writing, lots of blogs.
All the links will be in the description of this. We'll make sure that everything's there. And lastly, talk to me very quickly about mums over 50. What's this?
Go for it.
So as we are approaching May, the month of May is the month when we celebrate moms. And that's the case not only in Switzerland, but over
almost 60 countries,
60 countries in the world. So we are going to celebrate moms by interviewing 4 great moms who are also successful professional, either entrepreneurs or corporate people.
From all over the world.
From all over the world, from the US to Europe to Middle East. And we are interviewing them during half an hour, 40 minutes, something like that. We're going to post the interviews with useful links on social media. So if you want to follow us on LinkedIn, either Ellen or myself, or Wake Up, Shake Up, Thrive on LinkedIn, that's where you're going to find it. We're going to share it as well on our website. But we wanted to recognize that women's moms have done a fabulous job being both a mom and being active in the workplace.
Over 50.
And you'll love them.
And we'll be publishing nuggets. We'll be publishing nuggets on our blog. We'll be sending out emails and newsletters. And we want to really highlight these ladies.
Yeah, they deserve it.
Excited.
Marvelous. Ellen Kocher, Dominique Dahaou, thank you very much indeed for joining me.
We would like to say one last thing. This is our motto. You ready?
Yeah.
Don't grow old waiting.
That's a wrap. Thank you for joining me today. Your homework is to leave your 5-star review, and please, any comments you have, you really help me to improve every day. And it also helps people to discover me online. You should check out practical-leadership.academy because you want to help your new managers succeed with hybrid or remote working.